Hey, this is Mark Rosenfeld, Australia's dating coach, and today I'm telling you about the 7 standards that make great men chase you. This is absolutely one of my favorite pieces of content, and I did a live stream on this not too long ago, and you said you absolutely loved it. So I wanted to do a really short version for you, where I can tell you what these 7 standards are and why they don't just have great guys chasing you, but they have great guys continuing to chase you to build a fantastic, fulfilling, empowering relationship with you. See, when I first started coaching clients close to 5 years ago, I'd have them write out what they were looking for in a man. They'd write these big long lists of physical traits, emotional traits, communication traits, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that exercise. The problem was these clients were feeling overwhelmed. There was a big list, it'd be over 50 things. I was writing these lists for myself, and I realized I and my clients, we weren't remembering our lists. We didn't really have them in mind. They were a nice idea, but they weren't really getting the job done. And then, I started talking to people, women in great relationships already, and so many of them didn't have these big lists. They weren't approaching dating with this giant list of 100 things. That wasn't how they were going about it. And the more I talked to people in great relationships, and even met great people in my own life, the more I realized that there's actually just a few select traits that good relationships, that people in great relationships are qualifying their partners on, that make for a fantastic, empowering relationship. So I took some of the best of my own, took some of the best from clients and women I interviewed, and really it came down to literally just 7 traits. Just 7 traits that these women were qualifying men on to get, attract, have great relationships in their life. So let's get into the traits. What are the 7 traits and why are they so important to attract a fulfilling relationship? Number 1 is masculine, feminine balance. Now, I cannot even begin to describe how important this is. If someone can't access their masculine, that person's going to show erratic behavior, that person's going to show impulsive behavior, that person's going to be insecure, they're going to have all sorts of problems in a relationship. And if someone doesn't have access to their own healthy feminine, that man or even that person is going to struggle to empathize, they're going to struggle to be in the moment with you, they won't be able to be present, they won't be able to connect. You're going to have all sorts of problems if either partner is lacking access to either of the healthy energies. There's this myth that the woman should have all feminine and the man should have all masculine, and the two will complement each other. But if a man doesn't have his feminine and a woman doesn't have her masculine, then each partner becomes dependent on the other for that energy. That's the definition of dependency, of codependency right there. So even though a man will typically have more access to his masculine and spend more time in it, you'll have more access to your feminine and spend more time in it, thus polarization. You still want to have access to the healthy opposite energy, because that's what creates a balanced, healthy relationship between two balanced, healthy individuals. Number 2, the second standard is he meets all of his psychological needs in healthy ways. Okay, so all humans have psychological needs. Things like affection, belonging, connection, love, safety, attention, significance, importance, even rebelliousness. These are needs that often get shamed, but we all have them. Let's be honest, we all need attention. We all need to feel significant in our life. We all need to feel important in some way. We all need to have a sense of rebelliousness sometimes, whatever that means to us. So every human has these psychological needs. And one of the things you have to understand about humans is that if we're not getting our psychological needs met in a healthy way, eventually we will find an unhealthy way to do this. And I worked with quite a few clients who prioritize their work, very strong, successful, independent women, but they prioritize their work for so long and sacrifice love and connection as a result, that eventually they find themselves doing things that they deem immoral and unhealthy to get that love and connection. For example, I have one client who slept with a man that she really didn't want to sleep with and that she felt immoral about. Another that many years ago found herself with a married man. And they hate themselves for it, and they say, how could I have taken this immoral action? And I say, well, you denied your psychological needs in a healthy way for so long that eventually you found an unhealthy way to get them. That's what being human is. So when you're looking for a man who's capable of a great relationship, you want to look for a guy that gets these psychological needs met in healthy social ways. If you see a man who's getting his psychological needs met in unhealthy, antisocial ways, it's going to cause big problems and take away from any real chance of a healthy, empowering relationship. Number 3 is great sex. So this is such an important one, and it's a very simple one. I love Mark Manson's quote on this one. He says, when sex is working, it's 20% of a good relationship, and when sex isn't working, it's 100% of a bad one. In other words, sex can't make the relationship on its own, but it can certainly break it. I've been in this position, I've been in a relationship where the sex wasn't working, and I can absolutely back this up. Sexual chemistry, compatibility, the sexual component is a vital part, and that's why it's one of the 7 for creating a healthy, empowering romantic relationship. Number 4, does what he says and says what he does. Now, you may or may not have seen it. If you haven't watched it, it's a good watch. When a dating coach gets ghosted. It's a story that I posted a little while back about when I got ghosted and an experience I had in my own love life. And you know, the biggest takeaway that I took from that, and the reason I'm so grateful that that woman ghosted me and the experience I had, is because I never again forgot about this standard number 4 of the 7. Does what he says what he does. Or in my case, does what she says what she does. When you really hold this standard high, you remove impulsive people from your life, you remove people who can't be relied on, you remove people who are inconsistent and unbalanced. And all of these things are things you want to shift out to leave what's left are the people who are capable of a great relationship. Being able to qualify someone on this is huge, and if you commit to someone who doesn't do what they say what they do, or at least doesn't make a massive apology on the occasion where they don't, you're setting yourself up for an anxiety-ridden relationship that will erode your self-esteem. Number 5 is healthy priority balance. So we all want someone who has their own stuff going on, and we also want someone who can give us that valuable time and attention. A healthy priority balance, and qualifying men on a healthy priority balance means the guy has both. So he can prioritize you, he can give you that time, give you that presence, give you that connection, and then also tell you when it's not your time, when he has to focus on his friends or his work or his hobbies. Healthy priority balance simply means you're looking for someone who can prioritize you at certain times and deprioritize you at other times. Number 6 is understands healthy boundaries and personal responsibility. Now, I won't harp on about this one because I've done a couple of recent videos on boundaries, so have a look at them if you want to learn more about the specifics of boundaries. But boundary function and personal responsibility is basically the skill of a healthy relationship. So knowing what you're responsible for and finding a man who knows what he's responsible for and what he's not. Having someone who can tell you no, who can tell you yes. Having someone who can hear your no and hear your yes. Someone who understands that they're ultimately responsible for their own feelings and makes you ultimately responsible for yours while working with you and communicating with you through that to find the win-win for both parties. Someone who doesn't play the victim, who takes responsibility in their life. If you can qualify a man on his ability to understand both boundaries and personal responsibility, you have someone there with massive, empowering relationship potential. And number 7, how he treats you when he's at his worst. This was a huge penny drop moment for me when I realized how important this standard was. And it's one of the best standards, one of my real favorites, because it takes a long time to come out, right? When you're qualifying a man or I'm qualifying a woman on how that person treats us when they're at their worst, it's gonna take some time, right? To see someone at their worst. That stuff doesn't happen on the first 3 dates. So your qualifying time gets drawn out. And you're still waiting to see someone if a person is relationship capable, even if the connection is great. You're still pondering, you're still going, okay, well, how does this person act under massive stress when life's not going well, when they're on their worst day of the week? Because let me tell you, if a guy's a great guy 6 days of the week and then abusive 1 day of the week, shit partner. This is one of my favorite qualifiers. And when you really look at how someone treats you when they're at their worst, when they treat you at the best, that's just the cherry on top. How they treat you at their worst, that is the cupcake, that is the muffin, that is the entire cake of the quality of the ending relationship. You ask any long-term couple and they will say what really defined us was our worst moments and how we coped with that, not our best moments. So those are the 7. Those are literally the 7 standards. You can throw out everything else and just qualify men on those 7 standards. And I promise not only will great relationship capable men chase you, they will continue to chase you once they're in the relationship with you and create an empowering, fulfilling relationship the whole way along. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably thinking, well, Mark, you left out some of the stuff that I love. You left out physical attraction. You left out connection. You left out monogamy. You left out that he's healthy and into fitness, whatever. You're not going to forget that stuff. Okay, the problem with the big lists is you're not thinking about that when you're on a date, and if you're tick boxing, it's just weird. The actual stuff that's important to you, physical attraction, connection, you're not gonna forget any of that. It's the 7 that gets forgotten. Now to finish up, there's a couple of other things I wanna mention just because they're not one of the 7, but they are important to think about. The first one is awareness of where he lacks in the 7 and his ability to action on it. Okay, so no one's perfect, it's important to remember that. And even though this isn't one of the 7 traits, someone who can acknowledge where, oh, my boundaries maybe aren't great in that area. Or, oh, you know, sometimes I need to be more consistent doing what I say and saying what I do. No one's perfect, but if you find a man who can acknowledge his weak areas and action on those weak areas, that's a really good sign as well. Number 2 is you can't forget about practical incompatibilities. So sometimes, you know, whether it's kids, one wanting kids, one not, different religions, different living locations, you can both have the 7 traits, but if you have practical incompatibilities, that's still gonna push you apart. And the third is consistency. If I had to say one thing that's really important, and the reason the guy will continue to chase, great guys will continue to chase you for the 7, and you'll have great relationships as a result, is because it's not just a box you tick once. You do these things consistently. You're constantly qualifying. Does he continue to do what he say what he does? Does he continue to have good personal responsibility and boundaries? Does he continue to have a good balance in his energies? And this is the difference between the list, which becomes more of like a tick box thing, and the 7. The 7 is something you qualify men on over and over again. That's why they continue to chase. That's why these standards are so important, because they don't end, and men for a lifetime want to qualify to meet those standards. And that's the video. I hope you enjoyed. Throw out your list, just focus on the 7 with those couple of caveats at the end, and you will attract great relationships in the future with men who chase you for them. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button with the little bell as well. Hit the bell so you get the notifications and the thumbs up. And until the next video, empower yourself through growth, self-esteem, and authenticity, and I will see you very soon.